A plane crash leaves passengers stranded on the Pacific Ocean floor, surrounded by sharks and limited oxygen. Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is an action-adventure from 2024 titled No Way Up. The movie begins with a woman's body falling into the water in the middle of the ocean and floating for a moment before her eyes snap open in panic. Suddenly, Brandon wakes up from a nightmare. He's a bodyguard for the governor's daughter, Ava. Later, Brandon and Ava go to the airport, where Ava meets her friends, Jed and Kyle. They're going on a trip, and the guys aren't thrilled that Brandon is tagging along. But Ava insists her father wouldn't allow her to travel without security. Once they're on the plane, Ava and her friends choose seats at the back for more privacy. Ava notices that there aren't many other passengers, which seems odd. Shortly after takeoff, the plane shakes a bit, which is usually common. But when the plane shakes again, concern begins to spread among the passengers. The pilot explains that they accidentally hit some birds, and it's nothing to worry about. However, the shaking continues, and one of the engines catches fire. The pilot then asks everyone to fasten their seatbelts. As fear grips the passengers, a part of the engine breaks off, hitting the side of the plane and killing a passenger. The crack in the wall leads to a sudden change in pressure inside the plane. This causes items to start flying around and shaking. Bags fall from overhead compartments, hitting people on the head. Passengers who haven't fastened their seatbelts are thrown off their seats and across the plane, even when they try to grab onto others for support. Within moments, a wall breaks apart, creating a massive hole in the side of the plane. Many people are sucked out of the plane to their deaths. Brandon tries to hold onto a man who is floating, but the strong wind makes it impossible, and the man is blown away. Another man tries to cling to the seats, but the metal isn't strong enough to hold, and both the seats and the man fall away. A flight attendant tries to save a man from falling out of the plane, but ends up falling with him. After losing most of its passengers, the plane starts plummeting and crashes into the ocean. Water quickly floods the plane. Brandon gets stabbed by a piece of metal, and as the seats are thrust forward during impact, many passengers are crushed to death. The plane sinks and comes to rest on the seabed. Due to its angle, an airlock forms at the back, saving Ava, her friends, and flight attendant Danilo. Kyle suffers a broken arm. They hear strange noises from the water. Suddenly, Brandon emerges, bringing Rosa and her grandmother Marty to safety. Marty is unconscious, so Danilo performs chest compressions. After a few tense moments, Marty regains consciousness. Rosa asks about her grandfather, and Brandon sadly informs them that he didn't survive. The group starts to panic, so Brandon steps up to lead and calm everyone down. They're safe for now inside the airlock, so Brandon advises them to remain calm and wait for rescuers. Ava checks her phone but finds no reception underwater. She suggests swimming out through a hole in the plane, but Brandon explains it's too risky and they should wait for help. Danilo mentions that the pilots likely called for help before the crash, so rescue should be on its way. Brandon suggests having backup oxygen just in case. Danilo checks the plane's emergency oxygen tanks in the back, but finds them empty. Then, Marty remembers a passenger had a medical oxygen tank. Brandon volunteers to dive in and find it. Before he goes, Marty asks him to bring her husband's hat. Brandon dives into the water and swims through the plane's corridor, checking on the passengers who died in their seats. He finds the husband's hat and takes it, unaware of something swimming by the window. Next, he locates the oxygen tank and retrieves it before examining the hole in the plane. Deciding to search for more supplies, he swims further and is suddenly attacked by a shark that enters through the hole. The shark bites Brandon and he fights back, desperately trying to free himself. Meanwhile, the group becomes anxious when they notice ripples in the water, suggesting something is happening. Suddenly, the ripples vanish and Brandon emerges, instructing the others to stay away while showing severe wounds on his body. Gasping for breath, he gives the group the oxygen tank and the hat before apologizing to Ava. Then, he is pulled back into the water, and the group witnesses the shark's tail as it consumes him. Terrified, they retreat to the employee area and decide to continue waiting, following Brandon's advice. Then, Marty offers to tend to Kyle's arm, sharing that she was a nurse during wartime, and that's how she met her husband. Kyle screams in pain as Marty adjusts his bone back into place. Using thick magazines and bandages, she creates a makeshift splint. Meanwhile, a helicopter searches the area for the crashed plane, prioritizing the governor's daughter among the victims. Despite their efforts, they haven't spotted anything yet. Back with the survivors, they hear creaking noises, and the plane shifts, suggesting it could fall again at any moment. Jed's pessimism grows, but Danilo opens the oxygen tank Brandon retrieved. Suddenly, they notice the water turning red, realizing sharks have entered to feed on the drowned bodies. The plane shakes, and they see the sharks swimming outside their window, bumping into plane parts. Rosa grows increasingly frightened, but Ava reassures her, expressing confidence in their eventual rescue. However, the helicopter remains unable to locate them and is running low on fuel. The group keeps an eye on the rising water level and estimates they have about 3 or 4 hours before it reaches the back of the plane. However, they hear the metal creaking and notice water seeping through the ceiling, making them unsure if the plane will hold up that long. Suddenly, the plane starts sliding down, dislodging rocks until it becomes stuck again. Fortunately, no one is injured, but the new angle accelerates the rise of water inside the plane. Realizing the seabed isn't as stable as they thought, the group agrees they must swim out of the plane. They need to find a way to distract the sharks, and Rosa suggests that bubbles might deter them, recalling something she learned in school. However, they're concerned about holding their breath for an extended period. Kyle remembers that some passengers had scuba equipment. Danilo explains that the equipment is in the baggage hold, accessible through a hatch, but the oxygen tanks are likely empty, or else they wouldn't have been allowed on the plane. Ava believes the remaining scuba equipment could still be useful, but Jed's pessimism gets in the way. To address this, Ava pretends she needs to use the bathroom and hides there, overwhelmed by the plane's creaking sounds. When she emerges, Ava comforts Rosa, reassuring her that it's normal to feel scared. Meanwhile, the helicopter is running low on fuel. Just as their situation seems dire, they spot floating plane parts and dispatch 2 divers to search for survivors. The divers quickly locate the plane and approach the survivors, who signal from the window. However, a shark sneaks up on one diver unnoticed, despite the group's attempts to warn him. Tragically, the shark attacks and kills the diver. Amidst the chaos, the survivors hear noises above the plane and witness the diver's leg floating away. Concerned for the other diver, they search the corridor but find no sign of him, leading them to fear the worst. Outside, the helicopter is nearly out of fuel and has to leave. Fortunately, they have the survivors' coordinates, so help is on the way. Back with the survivors, Ava suggests they could take the other diver's oxygen tank if he's deceased. While peering underwater, Ava sees a shadow but can't confirm anything. Jed tries to investigate by standing on the seats but slips, falling into the water. The group panics momentarily until Jed resurfaces, revealing he was joking. However, before he can get back inside, the shark attacks him. As Jed struggles against the shark, the group pulls him away to safety, but he loses a leg in the process. Marty tends to Jed's wound, using seatbelts to create a tourniquet and stop the bleeding. Jed is upset about not being able to participate in triathlons anymore, and Marty comforts him while attending to his injury, keeping Rosa shielded from the sight. Still determined to find a way out, Ava volunteers to search for the scuba equipment. Danilo opens the hatch, revealing that the baggage hold is flooded, but Ava decides to dive in anyway. Using a flare for light, she explores the area, unaware of something swimming behind the bags. Suddenly, she's startled by an octopus when the flare goes out. Concerned, the group waits for Ava's return. Eventually, Ava finds the scuba equipment, but her absence worries the others. Thankfully, she returns safely with the gear. However, they discover there are only 4 diving suits and masks for the group. As they hear noises outside, they rush to check but find no diver, realizing it must have been a shark. Tragically, they realize Jed has died. The plane slides again, but stops abruptly, as the cockpit acts as an anchor. With water rising fast, they know they need to escape quickly. Remembering Rosa's idea, they plan to use oxygen canisters from the emergency masks to blow bubbles at the sharks. However, Kyle, traumatized by a childhood accident, admits he's a poor swimmer. With encouragement from Ava and Rosa, he agrees to try. Ava gathers all the oxygen masks she can find without going too deep into the water. As the sharks continue to hit the plane and the ceiling begins to crack, the group prepares to leave. Marty selflessly volunteers to go without a diving suit, recognizing that her age would only slow down the others. After bidding a final farewell to Jed, the survivors get into the water, noticing the plane is slowly sliding downward once more. Suddenly, the cockpit breaks completely and falls into the abyss, indicating the plane will follow soon. Marty insists that Ava and Rosa go first. As the girls begin swimming through the corridor, they encounter a shark blocking their path. They quickly open an oxygen canister to scare it away. With the way cleared, they continue moving forward, eventually joined by Kyle and Danilo. Meanwhile, Marty stays behind, knowing she won't be able to make it. She accepts her fate and waits to be reunited with her husband as the water rises inside the plane. At that moment, Kyle panics and swims back to find a small pocket of air. Danilo tries to go back for him, but suddenly a shark emerges from the baggage hold and attacks Kyle, devouring him quickly. Terrified, Danilo swims to meet up with Rosa and Ava, where they find the dead diver and use his tank to replenish their lungs. Ava then sends Rosa and Danilo through the hole with the tank. However, when Ava tries to leave, a shark blocks her path. Ava retreats and freezes, allowing the shark to pass without noticing her, though its tail brushes against her mask. Realizing more sharks are coming through the hole, Ava begins swimming towards the front of the plane. As the plane descends faster, the increasing water pressure makes it difficult for Ava to move. Thankfully, she clings to the seats and pushes through, managing to exit through the front hole just before the plane plunges into the abyss. Now in the water, Ava begins swimming towards the surface. However, she soon runs out of air and loses consciousness. Ava's body stops swimming, but her floaties bring her to the surface, allowing her to breathe again upon reaching it. Panicking when she doesn't see the others, Ava is relieved when helicopters arrive and pull her out of the water. Danilo and Rosa have already been rescued. When Rosa inquires about her grandmother, Ava delivers the sad news. In a final farewell to her grandparents, Rosa tosses her cherished plushie into the water before falling asleep in Ava's arms. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.